James, I'm back in Dubai and you're back in the show.
Thank you for having me again. Most people, I'm surprised when they invite me back again. I'm shocked.
You're worried in case you've caused too much trouble.
Exactly. Maybe, I know you like the stuff I put out, but I'm not sure your audience will like it. So I'm like, actually, your audience are aligned with both of us, right? So,
well, that's one of the things I was going to tell you. I mean, we speak lots offline now, which is amazing, and I'm really, really glad of that. But when the cameras are back on and the mics are back on, I wanted to share with you that one of the most common threads of feedback that I got from our episode was, I'm glad the both of you spoke about a lot of ideas that I've been thinking about and feelings that I've been feeling about society, the direction of travel, that I maybe wasn't hearing from other content creators. And that was really reassuring for me, because we were speaking about traditional values, the family unit, positive masculinity and expressions of that. And that, I feel it's becoming more popular again in terms of speaking about it, but my audience maybe hadn't had quite enough of that, which I feel like I've got a responsibility to up and increase now.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I think that a lot of people, in fact, I'd say most people think the same way. They're just too scared to voice their opinion. The exact example of this, which is super important, we talk about this a lot, but the US election, and I think it's vital. And the reason why it's such a groundbreaking moment was because it showed you people do think like that, but they're too scared. So remember what was going on about Kamala versus Donald Trump. People were told, if you said, oh, I quite like Donald Trump, or I'm going to vote for Donald Trump. And my US friends are like, what? You're going to vote for Donald Trump? And then they'll, list a list of things why they wouldn't vote for Donald Trump. Because, what, are you a racist? Are you a sexist? You know he's a rapist. And they're like, no, he's not. Where did you hear that from? And the problem is when you actually pushed those people and asked them, why do you think he's racist? Why do you think he's sexist? And they wouldn't come up with anything. They've been brainwashed. So the point I'm trying to make is people are told they're in the minority. They like Donald Trump. They like those values, those traditional values, traditional Judeo-Christian values. They're told to dislike them. However, what happened was, actually, over time, the reality when the voting came out was he won by landslide. He was made to sound unpopular, but the reality is when it came to voting, I knew he was going to win. You know why? Because the opinion polls were close. When I saw they were close at all, he's going to win by landslide. Because people that want to vote Donald Trump, a lot of them will just stay quiet. Because they're being bullied, right?
We have a term in the UK, shy conservatives. Now, you and I both dissociate from the current version of the Conservative Party, very much sold out to the globalists. But people used to come out of exit polls in the UK and they wouldn't say they'd voted for a Thatcher or a Major or a David Cameron, albeit I've got my views on what he did with the Conservative Party, because they were afraid of the backlash of, big bad Tories. Trump was exactly the same, but on a potentially higher level. And he had actually much more common support across all demographics this time round than prior. And while it was publicly less appealing to be out for Trump, I think now that he's won, it's quite reassuring that people can say now that they want a return to more traditional values. They want a lower tax society. They want higher safety. They want less unfettered, uncontrolled immigration. And these are all things that they're immediately obvious to anyone as the bedrocks of a good quality society. But we've gone so far away from it, it's ridiculous.
Because it's safe to admit you want that again. I think before, if you admitted it or you said that you wanted other things, you'd get bullied. You'd get ostracized, right? And the biggest thing for people, for most people, is fear of being ostracized. Because if you're ostracized by your close community, you'll die, right? So if you naturally in our DNA, men and women, more so women because they're physically weaker, women, we know, can get manipulated much easier. They're more agreeable. So what the elite have done recently is basically manipulate them, because they are the gatekeepers to children, to having children. So they're told masculine men are bad, masculinity is bad, toxic masculinity is bad, right? So they're told all this stuff. So who they pick are more and more feminine men. And the issue is when you have feminization of men, you have society breakdown completely. And you also have an unhappy household, unhappy kids, broken households, and also most of we actually have unhappy women. Women who have masculine husbands feel safe, they can be more feminine, and they're happier. Every single woman I've come across that has a feminine partner hates it. It sounds good because they're told to find this nice guy, but actually what's called a nice guy is a weak guy, which creates chaos at home.
Huge difference between a nice guy and a good guy. And for me, I hosted Dr. Robert Glover on the podcast during 2024. It was a real kind of bucket list moment because his book, No More Mr. Nice Guys, had a big impact on a lot of men. And he was speaking about nice men are typically weak to accommodating. And that's what we're speaking about there. If the elites have somewhat psyoped the female population into believing some of the news stories, the climate emergency, the seriousness of the C-19 period, then those men who are accommodating to those women who are frightened and scared is perfectly natural in that type of society. But in a strong and functioning society, the men would have stood up far sooner and said, actually, can we look at this more in our logical brain than our emotional brain? But because of the way that society has gone, men let it slide for far longer than ever before. So, for example, yes, I'll put my mask on in the supermarket because my wife will get upset. No, don't put your mask on. There's no efficacy for it whatsoever. This is ridiculous.
Factually, it shows right in front of you. It doesn't protect you. It's the same with the COVID-19 jab, right? It showed it didn't stop the spread. So the fact that your wife is telling you, most men I know had the jab because their wives. Their wives literally went, oh, you need to have it. You know, you can't not have it. You're an anti-vaxxer. A logical male brain, which pretty much is 90% of men, logically looked at it and go, this doesn't make sense. I don't need to have the vaccine if I'm young and healthy. However, the reason why they had it was because they let things slide so long. And actually a masculine man, say post-war, 1946, 1945, would have gone, no, I'm not going to do that. Literally, you're not going to do that to me. But like you said before, they let it slide for so long. This is how basically society, the elites control society. They've done it a bit at a time. Do you think communism happened overnight? No. This is what's happening in the UK.
Stealth communism.
And if you look down the rabbit hole, if you look at Keir Starmer and his whole cabinet, they're communists. If you look at their family, I don't know if you looked into it, I'm sure you have, because you are into this. If you look at most of their families, their parents, etc., they're communist, socialist, they're bad people. They're not people who just think, oh, this, David, Keir Starmer is just a stupid guy. He's not a stupid guy. He's an incredibly smart man, but a bad person.
Yeah, if you watch for these human rights lawyers, their track record is always very interesting, who they've defended and what they've been allowed to defend. Have you ever rubbed beef fat on your face? Sounds crazy, but that's what I've been doing since January with No Tox face balm. I've been really focused in the last few years on reducing the number of toxins that I take into my body, whether that's getting a filter for the water in my tap, whether that's removing things like heating plastics or drinking from plastic bottles. The skin is the biggest organ in the body, so it was about time I considered what it was I was rubbing on my skin, and that includes things like moisturizers and other potentially harmful chemicals. Since January, I've been using No Tox face balm. My skin looks and feels the best it's ever felt, and you can benefit from that too. The link will be in the show notes for notoxskincare.co, and you can use Cambro for 15% off. And they've had a clever way of defending them, which is why, oh, he's just stupid. Don't put down to malevolence what could be attributed to ignorance or stupidity is a common razor to cut through a lot of things, but it's not the case in this instance. The reason the UK is being managed through its decline and is increasing its totalitarianism is by design. It is not a case of mistaken, oh, whoops, we've just taken away some more of your freedoms. Oh, whoops, we've just increased, taken a bit more taxation on top of you. Oh, whoops, more business owners have left the UK, so the people with agency are fleeing the borders, while the people who are stuck in the UK, again, you and I have spoken about this offline, I feel still compelled to kind of stay and fight to some extent, but a more docile population who are more reliant on the state is far easier to control, and that is exactly what they're optimizing for.
Absolutely. The people that leave who would fight back, as I said, are leaving, right? People that would fight back, who have businesses, have taken risk, who are driven, hardworking, not even hardworking. I have a lot of people that have salaries that are hardworking, but like you said before, question things more. They're the ones who leave, right? And they're left behind with people that it can be hardworking, decent people, but they're not going to question everything. They put their head down and ignore what's going on outside.
That's right. And increasing the number of people who either are reliant upon the state through benefits or social care, but also increasing the number of people who are employed by the public sector. That's been an area of creep that has increased massively. The Scottish public sector is huge, but the UK public sector on a whole is also gigantic. And the number of people that are employed by the state means that you are much more at its mercy in terms of your employment and your income. So you're much more likely to toe the party line. And the party line is not one that you want to be toeing right now.
Look at during COVID, all the people that work for the government, etc., or social workers, whatever it is, right? They would be scared to toe the line. They literally would be like, oh, this is what I have to do. I have to have the jab. I have to do this. Because they do have to, otherwise they lose their job.
And that's one of the easiest ways to control somebody. If you can remove their means of income, which dictates a lot of their choice and the ability they have, then that's a big control mechanism to hold.
A question, actually, if you don't even know the answer, but during sort of the start of communist Russia, how many do you reckon actually a lot of people, they had a lot more jobs in the public sector there?
I would assume so, yeah. You assume so the size of the state. Yeah, they would. I think they would build it up, so that more and more people have a reliance upon the state, or, and this is maybe a case for what's happening in the UK, the economic situation is such that more and more people are reliant on housing credits or child credits or other means tested things that they can give out, which means that if those were ever withdrawn, people would fall into destitution and a level of hopelessness. And if you are destitute and hopeless, you're going to be much more likely to accept the likes of a UBI, a universal basic income, which is one of my big fears of what might come down the line.
Well, I think it's definitely going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to resist that at all costs, because that's when the carbon credits come and they say, sorry, James, you had steak yesterday, you're not allowed it until next week.
Yeah, of course, yeah. You know, like, also the amount you can travel in your car, right, as well.
Of course. One of the things we were talking about before this episode was some of the online conversations that you've been having. And one of the things that I saw you object most strongly to was a post that was titled, "We have a lot of work to do, men," in relation to some rather famous people in the world being greeted in the US. So the Tate brothers arriving and shaking hands with Dana White. And the caption to it was, "We have a lot of work to do, men," on International Women's Day. Now, you objected to that on a number of grounds, but one of the ones, chief among them, that I agreed with was, why should men apologise for the actions of one man or the potential actions of one man when in our own control, in our own agency, we can only impact ourselves and those we're directly around, rather than perhaps apologising for some famous figure or some figure that is, of course, a figure of influence?
So when men do that, I can see they're basically trying to attract women. They're not doing it to be good men. That's the first thing. Basically what it is weak men who can't become a good father, can't protect their family. The first thing they do is actually become the male feminist. They're trying to please women. But actually, that's not going to please any women anyway. But the most important reason why it annoys me so much is, say you have an example, right? This identity politics. If you have a large amount of crime be caused by black men, which you do have that in certain areas, destitute areas, how is that a black man who is a lawyer with a beautiful wife and kids, who's a good father, who works every single day, treats his children properly, tells his son how to be a man, treats his daughter properly, treats his wife properly, should he have to apologise for all the black crime? Well, of course he wouldn't have. It's insane. I mean, literally, I don't think that's even question.
And the people who are asking all men to apologise would never do that for a black man, because he meets a particular identity and number of characteristics which mean that it's off limits to have that conversation, whereas the average man is totally fair game for identity politics to kind of be the hate figure and be the target.
You put it into better words than I ever could. Exactly.
Well, that's why there's two of us.
Yeah, because you know exactly where I'm going with that. Exactly. That never would happen, right? And the same under the same breath, if you said that about a badly behaving woman, right? If you had, say, Bonnie Blue recently, who's trying to have sex with 1,000 men in one day, why would I blame someone who's a doctor, who is a wife, 2 children, who works a really hard job, is an incredible mother, who works hard? Why is she to blame for Bonnie Blue?
That's right, because that's a really important logical framework for us to follow. If all men need to apologise for the words and content of Andrew Tate, then the logical expansion and next step for that is for all women to apologise for the actions and behaviours and content of Bonnie Blue, which nobody in their right mind is calling for. I think as a society, we are questioning the behaviours of both those individuals to some extent.
Yes.
But we're not all being held responsible for how they're behaving. Although, interestingly, I would say that one of the reasons that the likes of a Bonnie Blue or these OnlyFans creators has been allowed to, and their behaviour has been perpetuated and expanded, is actually because of weak men.
Absolutely.
Because weak men are subscribing and paying money towards it, and almost not hero worshipping or I would not maybe hero worshipping, but encouraging it through this. Oh, but that's like sexual liberation. No, it's not. It's sexual slavery from my point of view.
It's complete opposite. It's actually taking away women's rights by doing that. That's the thing. And the thing about this as well, so you have, when I wrote that on my Instagram, a lot of men that, unfortunately, a lot of men literally messaged me personally. I had thousands of people message me personally say, I was so disgusted by that post. It made me so angry that I'm actually a good man. I've always treated people properly, have 2 daughters, etc. I'm a firefighter. Why'd I have to apologise for other men's poor behaviour? There's nothing to do with me. And telling me to call it out. I would be the first one to call it out. And that moves on to the next point. I had a lot of men go on there saying, it's not just good enough being a good man or a healthy man yourself. You need to call it out and apologise for this behaviour. And the problem with that is, this kind of comment, the kind of man that writes that telling me or you to apologise, or some firefighter or person who fought in wars, etc., to apologise. Like, what are you going to do about that kind of poor behaviour? What are you going to call out? If you saw a man beating his wife or beating his girlfriend, what are you going to do? You're built like a pencil or a little pot belly and a wobbly chin. What are you going to do? What are you going to do, literally? Give him a stern tut? The truth is, what are you going to do? Go over and tell off that guy beating his girlfriend. You're going to get beaten up and the girlfriend's going to get beaten up. I'm being very blunt here. Someone who's a black belt jiu-jitsu, who's physically tough, I would always step in and I always would do something about it. And everyone who knows me knows I would. And I don't think anyone denies that. I can literally grab the guy by the neck and choke him unconscious or beat the shit out of him. You're going to do fuck all.
That is very, very funny, because when I was reading the comment section, it was that sort of, oh, but James, your responsibility would be to get involved. And you're saying, well, within my level of influence and my locus of control, of course I'll get involved.
I would, yeah.
But on an online scale, I'm not going to be like telling men or intervening in, like, you got involved in that comment section because it compelled you to, but you're not going to go around saying, like, getting involved in all these things. But the element of having physical capability is very important as a man. And I think we've lost that with the feminization of society, where, for example, they might say, oh, you're a meathead for being into the gym, or, oh, are you compensating for something else by learning to fight, or by being having an element of aggression or an ability to be aggressive? And that, again, is detracting away from the capability of men to stand up to governmental forces, or even the kind of overreach that we're seeing in society, where we are kind of becoming debased from our traditional roots.
You're going to love this. I think that any woman I see that says that, why do we need men? Any woman that says that is so sheltered to the point where they have no realization of how important those kind of masculine men are. So Western women who say that, and not all women do this, I'll tell you this, it definitely is the loudest on the internet. Most women don't think this, but they say, why do we need men? Well, the truth is, the only reason you think, why do we need men, is because of men that have fought wars to protect you and have created such a sheltered society for women, they think they don't need men. Masculine men have fought so hard to protect you and give you your rights, you don't realize what rights you have till that is taken away from you. Masculine men have literally created a society that's completely sheltered you to think you don't need men.
Yeah, I've said this to you before. I'm fiercely proud of being British, and I think what Britain did for the world on the whole was a massive net positive. Of course, there were mistakes made, and
of course, I think it is.
And also applying the rules of 2025 to previous centuries where war was just conducted on a mass scale, and it was
everywhere around the world.
Exactly. So I just always find that really distasteful. Oh, but what happened in the 1800s was this, and you're like, do you know how much Britain did to end the slave trade? Like, do you know how much money Britain lost to end the slave trade, which was the right thing to do? But when people apply the moral standards of today, you're thinking, we would never win any war now. And that's what you're seeing in various wars across the world, where somebody tries to still be the moral arbiter and do things in a particular way. The wars are ongoing forever because nobody's willing to take the kind of necessary horrible action. I don't believe, for example, that the US would drop an atomic bomb on the Japanese nowadays to end World War II, because of the nature of social media and the kind of public discourse that would go around that. Could you imagine the reaction if somebody said, look, we're going to end this war that's gone on for forever by taking this particular action, which is incredibly distasteful and incredibly harmful? I think people would say, no, don't do it. Okay, well, we'll just continue to fight each other in the trenches for the next 30 years.
So actually something I suppose to talk about quite a bit, because I'm being half Japanese myself. I'm actually going back to Japan. I haven't been back for 20 years. To go back tomorrow. And basically what you just said there, the atomic bomb actually saved more lives. And you know this, you've read into it a lot. So the reason being for that is Japanese, I admit this, I had a Japanese mum growing up, and I understand their culture very deeply. Japanese are the most tenacious people in the whole world. By a long way. It's not even comparable, literally, to people. Any Russians would admit they're so crazy. They go, Japanese are another level. And also the amount of military aggression that people say about the Nazis, Japanese, and my dad actually, I spoke to my dad yesterday about this. Japanese were the most violent people in the war. Worst, yeah, you know, because you read into it. People who read into the war, the most violent people in the world. The thing with the Japanese, what they said was to the world was, we will carry on fighting till there's not one person left. And the only country in the world who, knowing Japanese people, they would actually...
They mean it.
They really mean it. They would actually go to the point where every child would die. So if someone tried to capture a Japanese, woman or man, whatever it is, but I'm talking about just a family member of some sort, they'll just jump off the cliff. They'd rather kill themselves. And the point was, they would fight till the last person was dead. The whole point of dropping the atomic bomb was to make them surrender. And it was a massive thing, actually, them surrendering, because the emperor was seen as a sort of god back in the day. I'm not actually talking to someone that actually read into about the World War II. So they saw the emperor as a god, that they never even heard his voice before. He was like a omnipresent figure. And for the Japanese to give up over the radio was talking about them surrendering was a massive, massive loss for them. Completely changed the trajectory of Japan, actually. So now they're completely a pacifist country. They don't have an army. I think they may be building up one recently because of some other threats. However, they became completely pacifist. Well, actually, was incredible for them financially. That actually the Americans helped them out, etc. But the point I was trying to say was the atomic bomb being dropped actually saved more people in the end run, even though it seemed terrific at the time. And instead of these wars just carry on forever like we have right now.
Yeah, people nowadays would rather be seen to do good than to actually do good. Now, that was not an act of goodness, but it was a necessary evil that had to happen. Whereas if I look at, for example, the comment section that you waded into, so many people were trying to be seen to be good to women rather than actually being good to women.
Correct. I can tell you this, every single person that wrote a comment on that, and luckily intelligent women said this to me as well, women I know in my life will tell them exactly the same thing. Men that write that usually are the worst people to their wives and women around them. As you said before, actions speak louder than words. It's the old school example, right? Old school phrase. But actually what happened to those men, what are you going to do? Every single man who wrote that, will you say, oh, we need to do better, we need to do this, or, you need to call it out. What are you going to do personally? Genuinely, you don't have the physical capability, because the number one thing as a man is being a protector. It's built into DNA. There's another thing, unfortunately, a lot of women don't understand. You understand this literally being a man. You genuinely want to protect women. It's not to control them. Generally, we want to be kind to women and protect them. It's not to control them whatsoever, zero. And women want that as well. They want a strong man to feel protected by their husband and good men around them. Yeah, the point is, these men on there can't do anything. They say you need to do better. You couldn't do anything. How are you going to help women? I don't understand how a guy with a little wobbly chin and a pot belly I just don't understand how he's going to help anyone. You posting on their Instagram is not going to help anyone. Same with BLM. When people posted the black tiles, how are you going to help poor black families? By posting a tile. Genuinely, what are you doing? Literally, what are you actually doing? From your £7 million house bought by your parents, putting a black square, what are you doing? People told me at the time, they're like, well, why are you not posting a black square? I said, how's this going to help anyone? This is ridiculous. Also, I don't understand the ins and outs of the story either. I don't understand what happened.
Oh yeah, and that's certainly
another one.
That's been exposed since
then. Where did all the money go?
Exactly. And if you look into George Floyd's background and his medical
Horrific
history
person.
as well, yeah, absolutely,
nasty,
terrible,
evil
so
man. Yeah.
It was an opportunistic moment to enforce, which again we saw was a kind of communist-like movement, which funneled all the money in sort of with this virtuous cause away to a small number of people. But something that you mentioned there is a lot of the people who were engaging in the comments engaged in what would typically be female tactics. Now, you spoke there about men being physically capable. As men, evolutionary, to assert our dominance within the hierarchy, we must be physically capable. The goalposts have moved a little bit, where online you can reputationally damage somebody to try and reduce their social standing and their status within the hierarchy. And that is typically being reserved for females. So, for example, classic example, if a female is threatened by the looks of another female, she may say something like, oh, but I heard she's promiscuous, or, oh, she's actually a little bit dumb and stupid. She won't be able to have an intellectual conversation with you. Or, again, the promiscuous one is the key one to lower her down. Yeah. Is to lower down. What is happening now is men are adopting some of those feminine tactics online because of a lack of physical capability and because of the terrain that we're having that battle on.
Because it's easy to do it, right?
Of course. So they would say, James is a meathead because he's really into the gym, or, oh, how does he spend so much time training, or, oh my goodness, he's so materialistic. Look at him living in Dubai and working hard to build a business, or objecting to eye-watering taxes in the UK. What a terrible man he must be. So rather than competing with you physically, they have instead tried to denigrate your reputation through snide and more feminine tactics, because that's the only arena that they can now operate within.
Yes, well, you said the whole thing. There's nothing for me to say, is there? That's exactly, we spoke about this the other day. So men fight literally by physically fighting, or improving their status by literally becoming a better hunter. And also another one is men like men that are high status, and they want to become friends with them because they want friends in their social groups. They can hunt with them, and they want to learn off the masculine men. You're the same as me. All masculine men I know like men who do what makes them feel good being around them, and they want to improve themselves. You ask them how they've done it, they tell you, and also you feed their ego because you're telling them, oh, I really respect what you're doing. They tell you, you tell them what you do.
But that's the whole premise of this podcast. I speak to interesting individuals who share their story, their perspectives, and it helps my audience of primarily, I would say 80-20 split male-female, but and the females that are listening are very self-development minded, so they're sort of outliers, whereas a lot of females tend to listen to true crime podcasts or other things, but the females that listen to Cam Rowe are super dialed. But as you say, strong, powerful men are drawn to associate with other strong, powerful men because there's a level of a rising tide raising all ships, and spending time with those people is positive for both you and the people you're involved with.
Yeah, so with women fight very, very different. It's reputational damage. So like we said before, a woman who walks into a room that's pretty, women will make a snide comment usually. And how people behave is so obvious what people are doing, right? If you look at it, we're animals at the end of the day, right? So you watch people, what they do. So women, what they'll do is they'll call them sluts usually. They'll call them stupid. So another example of this, which is a crazy experiment, and I think maybe you told me about this, it was a Chris Williamson podcast. He was talking about how women, what they would do is they actually checked if a woman would go in who was prettier, the hairdresser would actually suggest to get their hair shorter.
Remarkable, because it lowers her sexual market value.
Correct, because women long hair, beautiful hair means
it's more attractive, they're more fertile potentially.
Correct, yeah.
That also linked to the body positivity movement. I don't know if I think maybe Chris spoke about this in the same podcast, but I've certainly seen that in this world where, it's okay health at any size, or it's okay, like being big is beautiful. Women can encourage other women to do that because it actually increases their status versus them. Because if a woman is heavily overweight, then she's a much less attractive partner in the grand scheme of things. In the same way, if she had shorter hair or perhaps other elements that encourage her, like, oh yes, absolutely, wear that particular outfit because that's fine. Or girl, happily you can.
You don't sleep with every guy.
Like that sexual that sexual liberation. That again lowers their sexual market value because men are like, oh my goodness, she's extremely promiscuous, or I'm not as attracted to her with how she looks just now because she's overweight. Whereas somebody saying slay queen online to her is encouraging her to keep going down that route.
Yes. The whole body positivity movement isn't to help themselves, actually to destroy other women. And actually, it's the thing I say about this. All women who say, go girl, slay queen, I'm all about body positivity, actually, they're women who hate other women. They actually hate, in the same way I'd say under the same breath, men that are male feminists hate women because women don't like them. The real reason male feminists become male feminists is because they can't climb hierarchy in a way that good men can. They can't become attractive to women, becoming physically strong, earning money. So what they'll do is become a male feminist. And usually these men are bitter towards women because women don't select them. So what they try and do is ally with them and try and belittle men who they find attractive. You know, the guy who's tall, strong, etc. They'll go, oh, but I bet he's stupid. I bet he's this. And they're exactly the same thing as a woman does when they see an attractive woman walk in the room.
They sabotage reputation behind the scenes because they wouldn't dare do it in public.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think we saw that in that comment section. It was actually a wonderful encapsulation of weak men trying to tear down somebody who objected to an idea. And you were perfectly up for a reasonable debate to start with, but then the comment section just turned into a war where people were wanting to have reputational damage, tear you down, attack your character and your values, because that was the only grounds that they decided that they could have that sort of conversation.
Well, we know with hierarchy men, it's really, really simple. And you're an exact example is you understand how it works. And women understand how it works. Being physically strong, earning money and education, and physically strong will go and then being able to fight. So the issue, I've known that from a young age. I was very honest when I was 12 years old, 11 years old. I was like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to get a good education, earn money, be physically tough. Like I knew straight away. Started training, got into martial arts, started Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu when I was 14, third dan black belt Jiu-Jitsu, went to King's, got a good degree from there, have a business that does relatively well, have nice stuff. 2, admittedly, is for social status, right? To prove you're a good hunter, right? I know that from a young age. And what happens is a lot of these men, I know what happens, they click on my profile. And it's not arrogant, it's just true, because I've done that, created this life deliberately because I knew what I wanted. They'll click on the profile, meathead, they go, degree from King's. Yeah, but I bet he can't fight. It's a black belt jiu-jitsu. Yeah, they don't know where to go. So what they'll do, and the only thing they can do, you can't measure because those things are ticked. They'll call you a bad person. Yeah. Because you can't measure it.
Yes. Oh, you're narcissistic, or focusing on the gym that much must mean you're compensating for something else. Course, yeah. Or I bet he's not in touch with his emotions. Oh, yeah, well, actually, we had
it's the opposite.
Well, we had a conversation about your mum on the last podcast, yeah, which clearly shows you're in touch with your emotions. It's laughable. And I really find it fascinating that that's the battleground that people now take up, and I really wish that our society would move more towards our traditional modes of having these conversations or having our hierarchy more clearly.
Well, we'll see how long that lasts. We'll see how long that lasts when society breaks down in the West and when They literally hate strong men, and then when all the strong men leave and they're left. Well, and also what we're seeing in the UK, what's going on with uncontrolled immigration, a lot of nasty people have come in. And we're going to see when they say, I don't need a strong man, we'll see what happens when one of those guys burgles your house, comes in your house and tries to rape you. And then you literally have no man there, or your boyfriend literally hides behind you.
That's right. And one of my biggest challenges about the immigration conversation is that it's only become remotely popular or safe now to object to it. But I hope on so many levels that it's not too late. But if you look at the percentage numbers of unfettered military age men in the UK who we have no documentation for, or even the ones we have documentation for, goodness knows if that documentation is remotely correct.
Exactly,
because let's be honest, who's checking in on that?
Correct, yeah.
The numbers are not favourable to a functioning society, and there's particular towns in Scotland where the percentage of people arriving versus the domestic population is incredibly high, and the police force are not going to be able to handle the volume of things that are happening, and many of them are, as you hinted at, sexual cases because of the nature of I'm not going to say religion, but because of the nature of the culture of the individuals involved and arriving, they have no respect for our women, which you're complaining that Western men don't have respect for women. What you have just brought in is going to be on another level.
It's going to be a lot worse. And it's interesting you said that. So that's a discussion actually as well that people don't talk about, they're too scared to talk about. So you can actually keep this in or not. But what I spoke to a lot of my friends that are Muslim, and I asked them, I said, well, obviously, literally, what's going on? You know, I live in the UAE. Why is it so safe? And all the Muslim men I know are really lovely people, like really just nice, really super respectful. Won't look at your wife, look away almost as well. They say it's actually it's a social class thing. So what's happened is the immigrants we used to have back in the 70s, you know, the sort of the Pakistani immigrants, the old school ones, actually came in, worked hard, their own little shop. Their sons are surgeons, doctors, like my friends. I have a lot of friends who are surgeons, Pakistani, Syrians, etc. And I asked them, and they said it's a social class thing. So the people you're letting in are not the same people. They're not the same Muslims. The ones, I'll tell you this, the reason why, if you're a Muslim and you are educated and hardworking, you want to be educated and hardworking, you're not going to go to the UK. You go to the UAE. So what's happening is we're letting in people that want to be on benefits, they want to have 6 kids and don't want to work. And that's the kind of people we're attracting in the UK, and these are the kind of people that cause that problem. Because there's plenty of scummy white people. It's just the same equivalent. You're just letting the scum come in, basically. That's the problem.
There's a huge difference. I'm really glad that you articulated that in the right way, because I spend a lot of time in the UAE, and it is a wonderfully high-functioning Muslim country where they have a very traditional interpretation and implementation of Islam, and it makes it a very nice place to live.
Correct.
And they also have a level of flexibility with the Westerners that stays within a particular tolerance radar, which also makes it a great place to live. Because if it became too Western, we would actually end up with a lot of the same ills as Europe, where you have much more flagrant drug use, you have much more flagrant sexual liberation and looseness to it. Whereas here, there's like a level of allowance that's allowed for Western behaviours, and it's sort of the kind of perfect amount. Any more than that, and we would start to have more degeneracy.
For me, it's exactly the right amount. So it actually is aligned with my values. The amount they allow here is perfect for me. It's basically well, I'm going to centre right. Actually, it's just normal views. Literally, you basically want somewhere safe, and people allow. This interesting thing. The UK was that, right? So Ant Middleton spoke about this. So Ant Middleton said, he goes, and this is what I'm proud to be British, because literally, he goes, what we're proud about being British is because we allow people to come in, and if you play by rules, we'll look after you, and you can integrate. You can be from a Pakistani family. You can be from a West Indian family. You can be from a Polish family, and then you integrate. And also, I'll tell you something very interesting, is you'll be considered British, and actually be considered British. Not pretend, you'll be considered British. I know Pakistani friends actually who would call themselves actually British. They're proud to be British. I'm British, I'm a British surgeon.
And that is amazing, and that's the sort of country that we have always wanted to be. But we've completely lost that. And you said that on our last podcast, your dad was Irish, I believe, and
yes,
mum was Japanese.
Yeah.
But you are fiercely British, and your parents had British values because they bought into the society that we had at that point in time. Whereas now we have completely debased the society that we have, and the values are in disarray. And we're watering it down every single week with all the nonsense that we're putting up with.
Well, it's everything. It's everything. So people always ask you this: why is the UK falling apart? And they'll go for one thing. It's not one thing. It's like 20 different things. It's to do with the way we dealt with COVID. It's the way that we have no values left in the West in terms of a backbone. And that doesn't have to be Christian, but well, actually, the values are Christian, but you don't have to actually be Christian. It's not to do with that. It's just simplistic Christian values, right? You can live by them.
Culturally Christian.
Culturally Christian. And and what's great about the UK, good or bad, a lot of people that are genuinely very culturally Christian, you ask them they're Christian, they go, well, technically I am, but I have Christian values, right? And that's what Ant Middleton was talking about. We've lost that completely.
I'm really encouraged by somebody like Ant getting involved in the political sphere, because I think we need people who are not part of the political class to become our political leaders in the same way that Trump, Musk have become involved in the US. We need the likes of that. Now, I'm not comparing Ant Middleton to Trump, but we do need individuals like that. And one of our mutual friends who's been on the podcast as well, Elliot Wise, he is very much building towards being in that space as well. Like a lot of the content he's creating just now is speaking around the demise of the UK, what we must do to turn the corner. And he has publicly said he wants to stay and fight for it. And I'm really, really encouraged by that. So individuals like that may help us start to swing the pendulum back towards where we want it.
I think we can. I think the thing is, I go between the other, and I don't know. No one knows. You don't know. Nobody knows. I'm hopeful that the Keir Starmer doesn't destroy the country enough in the next, was it 4 years? Probably 4 years now, to the point where it's irreparable. But I genuinely think, and you'll agree with this, we're this close to being too late. I actually, hand on heart, believe we can recover, but I think we're this close. Unfortunately, if I'm being honest with you, I think we're about a year from it being non-repairable. And I think we are going to, being honest, I think it's going to be, I know you're on a nod because it's uncomfortable because you want to survive. I think we're a year away from non-repairable, and it will become non-repairable in the next year.
Frightening.
By the way, it's one of these things, I say, I hope I'm completely wrong. I really hope I am. But the way it's going in terms of everyone that provides value and is hardworking and owns a business, etc., provides jobs, or people that have professional jobs, lawyers, doctors, etc., are leaving. Because if you have a family in the UK, and if ain't broke, don't fix it, the usual thing. However, it's so broken they can't survive. If you're a doctor and you're earning good money and you go, well, I could move to the UAE, but I earn enough money, my family are happy, there's no point in me moving. But it isn't that. That's the issue. It's to the point where doctors literally are on the breadline or living at home with their parents, with their families. So it is so broken, they kind of have to go. That's the issue.
Yeah, it's the whole Regent Beta paradox, where something has to be so bad to cause action, whereas if you're just comfortably numb, then you drift along for many, many years. Whereas I think we've reached the tipping point, particularly in the last 18 months, where taxation is so high, safety is so low, the mood and the energy of the place it's like that of a company that's just made a round of redundancies. It's just very dark.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging people to take action with the exit of many, I think it was 9,500 millionaires left the UK last year. But what I would talk about is actually the number of future millionaires that left the UK as well, because those doctors are not millionaires right now, but they may be millionaires in the future. Many of my friends who have moved to UAE or moved to the US are not millionaires right now, but they're earning between like 60 to 100k.
They're earning well,
and
they're
their future.
Exactly.
They're the future high agency people within the country. And if you lose the current high agency people and the future high agency people, you're left with a very large dependency culture within the UK, and that makes it harder to repair the damage that a Starmer government's going to do.
The thing is, when they say, dependency, right? But this is a crazy thing when you said about the millionaires leaving. Unfortunately, I'm in a bubble. If you look at most British people, how they respond to what you just said there, this many number of millionaires are leaving. We have the second highest exodus of millionaires in the world, one being China, being the highest. But we have 20th of the amount of people. So actually, per person, we're performing the worst in the whole world. The unfortunate thing is, an average British person, when they hear that statistic, goes, fuck them. Fuck the millionaires, we don't need them. They seem to think it's sort of the political elite. They don't seem to understand these people just have small businesses, medium-sized businesses, who are just generally hard-working people. And this is the issue. And then the same thing I see in the comment section about the UAE. I've seen people write stuff like, oh, who the fuck goes there? I'm like, well, the highest influx of millionaires in the whole world are going to a place that only has 12 million people. So successful people are going there.
The population is booming here for good reason. Every time I spend time here, I can see why somebody would want to be here more.
Fantastic.
It is remarkable. Something that I think has been really important, and you were sharing some of his clips, is Daniel Priestley's been speaking out really strongly about the fact that small business owners who are growing their business are being crippled by the UK. So it isn't just millionaires that are leaving, it's people that are building their business in that regard. And it's great to have somebody who is, one, as intellectual as him, and two, an Australian who moved to the UK who loves the place, talking about that. That is so much more encouraging than maybe just you or I shouting about it.
Yeah, of course. And this is the unfortunate thing. I know people have moved from Australia or these other places that love it. Look, my parents are both immigrants, my dad being Irish, and actually, better to live in Ireland now, actually, it's doing great. or my mum being Japanese and moved to the UK. And this is the unfortunate thing. And a lot of people have moved, are passionate, and they go, well, I moved to this country because it's fantastic. And I would actually separate London from the rest of the UK. I would actually, London being sort of like a small sort of bubble in terms of finances, so the financial services. The issue is literally, it was an incredible place, and I think it still is. I think it still is. I think it still is, but it's at the cusp. And people like Daniel Priestley, who's being Australian, who moved to the UK talking about this, I'm hoping, like you said before, it doesn't sound like a typical Brit moaning about it. He's saying this is going down a very, very bad path. And if we don't do something about it, it's going to be too late. And what do you think, what is the thing that can stop this happening?
It's got to be a change in political class.
Correct, yeah, of course it does.
And because on a macro level, there's very little that we can do. For example, national insurance rising impacts so many businesses on their bottom line, but doesn't impact their staff positively. It's just another stealth tax to take more money away from somebody's salary to pay to the government. So if somebody's expecting a 3%, which is in line with inflation roughly, if we believe the inflation figures, if somebody's expecting that at their annual review, the employer's saying, oh, sorry, I can't do that because I'm actually already paying you 3% more because I'm paying an extra 3% to the government for national insurance. So there's all these ways that are just attacking businesses and the end user, which is somebody that's employed by these businesses at all times.
What happened with my business? Exactly the same thing. If your bottom line, right, you have to pay 3% more. It's your decision whether you pay them 3% more, and that's the truth. And sometimes it's not in a harsh way. You genuinely just can't. You just don't have the money. Like, it's not a bottom line. We're not all Jeff Bezos. People go, oh, it's bottom line. Like, small businesses genuinely can't afford to pay 3% more because they literally don't have that leeway, in particular in the UK with small businesses or medium-sized businesses that are premises. The tax and the rent is just so heavy, there's nothing left.
Yeah, and I guess one thing that I was really keen for us to talk about today, and we shared a post recently, and we've mentioned body positivity movement already, but was the discussion around the invention and the uptake level of Ozempic has really pointed to the fact that the body positivity movement was a complete psyop and a complete comfort blanket and nonsense statement that didn't really have any basis. And you and I were both talking to Paul Standel off the back of it, weren't we? What a great post.
Yeah. So the thing is, if body positivity is a thing, beauty at any size, why would you even care about taking Ozempic? Well, you wouldn't. No, that's the end of the conversation. We stop it there. It's ridiculous. If you say this is the thing, it proves that it's nonsense. Another thing as well, the thing is when they go, I can't lose weight because, my metabolism, or I'm already eating really low calories. So how come when they take something like Ozempic, that reduces your appetite, so you eat less calories? Why do they lose weight straight away? You've been lying. You have been eating too many calories. It's a fact. So all this nonsense about body positivity and also can't lose weight, both are nonsense. Both are nonsense. But the proof is really they don't think there's beauty at any size, because any opportunity you can lose weight with doing less work or less discipline, they jump on it straight away.
It's remarkable though, isn't it, how the goalposts move so quickly? And it's very similar to the C19 period where it was like 4 weeks to stop the curve, or wear this mask to protect granny, or whatever it was, or keep 2 meters. The sort of lines that come out and they just almost erase them from history that they were ever used. So like health at any size will change now because Ozempic will be pushing it, be like, okay, you can all be healthy regardless of your dietary habits or regardless of your appetite level or your ghrelin or whatever it is. And I'm in a funny position when it comes to Ozempic because I think people who genuinely have such a hard time losing weight in any form, and I think I look around the UK just now, and I was speaking to my brother the other day, we've just opened a new spa at David Lloyd, and so many of the people that go there are visibly incredibly unhealthy, and they're in a health club. And I was saying to my brother, I was like, I actually, like, they can't all not realize that it's calories in, calories out. They just cannot adhere to it in any shape or form.
Everyone realizes they're eating too much. It's just literally they can't adhere to it.
But behaviorally, so for those people, I wonder if a medical intervention is important. But also, those people have never at any point, hopefully, been on board with the body positivity movement, but the elites have pushed that message that's maybe said to them, oh, don't worry about your health, you don't need to address it. So they've walked around almost blissfully unaware that the issues continue.
I mean, two things. The first thing I'd say, we'll go back to this in a second, is body positivity doesn't exist for men. Not one man I know of in history has ever said, I'm happy about being fat.
Yeah.
Like, you're laughing because everyone knows it's true, and hopefully listeners just go, you're right, because it's not true. Because again, women are more emotional than men. Men logically go, this is ridiculous. It doesn't, there's a certain level of lying that men just can't do. They're just like, no, that's not true. And I'll tell you another thing. No person who's a self-made multimillionaire who's fat will say they're happy about being fat. Zero. Because they've had to be so honest about numbers, etc., to build that business. Because they weren't honest, they would have gone bankrupt repeatedly. So people that actually earn a lot of money from scratch would be honest about them to themselves and say this is nonsense. And about the Ozempic thing, this is a two-pronged type thing. And I think you think the same as me. There's this obsession in the fitness industry, which I think is also pathetic, where they literally are horrific about Ozempic, saying, oh, those losers can't stick to their diet, this and that. And people actually, funny enough, message me thinking I'm like that because they don't read me very well. You read me better. A lot of men can't read me, or women can't read me. I think Ozempic is fantastic. I think for people that are incredibly overweight and are so far from their goal weight that they literally are suffering, I hate mental health crisis, but they are. Someone who's slightly overweight, 6 kilos overweight, little belly, they probably just eat a bit too much and drink too much. Somebody who is 30, 40 kilos overweight is not just eating a bit too many calories, they're gorging because they feel so low about their weight, and it just goes round in a spiral.
Their hunger signals are also
all over the place by then. All over the place
gone.
by then.
Again, this is a Scottish phrase, but they don't know whether it's Disneyland or Annie's Land because that's a place that I stay near, and that is absolutely the case. And I think a drug intervention like that is very necessary for those individuals. There is, however, of course, potential side effects to that. I think as GLP-1s or whatever the terminology is for them starts to become more developed, those side effects will hopefully in time reduce. But I think, and that's where people would maybe be surprised in you and I's take on this, I am keen to see those people utilise the intervention to get some sort of momentum, because momentum is a hell of a drug.
They feel good about themselves, they look better, and then they can think, right? They literally, so their signals, let's explain from the start. If their signals are all over the place, like you said before, they don't know whether it's Disneyland or
Annie's Land.
Annie's Land. I want to steal that phrase. They don't even know where they're coming around. They're so depressed and feel so low all over the place. They don't even know where to start. They don't know where to start. They don't know what day, etc. Like you said before. So by having an intervention that can control their appetites, they can literally think and then start creating good habits. Because they can think, they can start eating better quality food. They can eat food that makes them feel more full. Because they're not as hungry, they're not starving all the time, they can pick foods that are a bit healthier for them. Then once they come off the Ozempic and they have better dietary habits and they've lost the weight, they feel better about themselves, so they want to eat better, so they feel less depressed, and they probably want to binge eat less because they feel good. And also on top of that, better dietary habits, so they're not as hungry all the time. And I'll tell you the most important, and therefore can be a great intervention. The reason people lose muscle, what we think at the moment, is because when people have Ozempic, they're not hungry and they just eat nothing. If you're eating enough protein and lifting weights, I know people personally have used it, people have done it properly, lifted weights, ate enough protein, they've generally just lost fat and held onto their muscle tissue. With saying this, I'm going to tell you something that's factual. The side effects of Ozempic are going to be less severe than being morbidly obese, without doubt. So are these stupid PTs that have the IQ of a cracker telling people, oh, it's ridiculous, I'm sorry, just wrong. Someone, as a blanket term for the whole country, if we can get people to be less obese by using Ozempic that has some side effects, I promise you this is going to be less of a burden on the National Health Service. Of course it is.
That's completely correct. And I really like this because you do see the PTs jumping on like, oh, personal responsibility, agency. And my podcast is primarily about people taking control of their lifestyle when they can. But I completely understand that for a percentage of the population, which has grown significantly over the last period of time, I think something like 60% in the UK classifies as obese, which is terrifying. And it's getting worse, definitely. They would do well with that intervention. And we need to understand that there's context and nuance to the fact that they use it. And as you say, it's considerably better for them to take a drug that may have some side effects than to continue to walk around at many, many kilos overweight.
It's easy if it's someone to say from their castle, right, to say, oh, I would just do this, right? And I'm in shape. I've been in shape most of my life because I have good dietary habits. I would never say that about someone else. I don't understand someone else's circumstance. I don't understand what it feels like to be on the breadline. I don't understand what it feels like that. I don't know what happens, being empathetic. They might have some horrible things happen to them. And it's not always, some people are just lazy. However, the truth is, even someone using Ozempic and they're being a bit lazy is still better than just being morbidly obese. It is.
I mentioned my brother and I were speaking at the spa the other day, and we were looking at the general shape of the people there, and I'm quite worried about the nature of a lot of their health. And we joke, are they being poisoned? And by the food system, I think it's bad in the US. Thankfully not.
Well,
quite
they
as
are
bad.
being poisoned in the US. Yeah.
But in the UK, it's still pretty bad. And something that you were speaking about online that somebody took real exception to was trying to remove some of these negative chemicals that are in our system through the quality of our food, through the things that we cook our food in, through the water that we drink in terms of filtering it. How anyone can get annoyed with you speaking about that, James, was mind-boggling. But actually, and nowadays the fancy term for it is biohacking our lives in terms of the less processed food, non-stick pan, not using these non-stick pans, not taking in some of the plastics and microplastics from our either heating food in it or from drinking out of plastic bottles. These are all positive interventions, but again, you ended up in the wars on it.
Yeah, because I made a video about non-stick pans being toxic, increasing risk of cancer, and this is a mainstream media thing that's well known. It's not. This is the whole point. It's not a discussion. This is what this guy tried to have, this like discussion, but it's not a discussion. There's a film called Dark Water, I think it was called, a big Hollywood film talking about it, and it's a big thing about Teflon pans. Also leaching into the environment, into rivers, etc., and killing loads of fish, etc. But the point being, anyway, is all I said in the video is, use steel pans instead of non-stick ware. It's healthier for you. Non-stick ware has increased your risk of cancer. It does. And this guy made a video about me saying, I'm a man of the people. James doesn't understand what's like to be poor. All he does is train elite clients. I'm a man that cares about people, unlike him. And then basically said, and he said, why? I'm not joking. The actual end line was, why can't you just trust the government? He wasn't even joking. I was like, after what happened, you must. He wasn't trolling. This thing, I think, was just joking. We was trolling, but I thought he was actually joking. And a lot of my friends sat there going, he must be joking. Like, he must be joking. And I responded the usual way. I said, well, actually, factually, steel pans are cheaper, first of all. They're cheaper anyway. And second of all, why is it, like you said before, why is it negative to try and look after your health, make these small changes that add up? Why is it negative? Why don't, if I could, this thing is more likely to give me cancer. Why don't I just change to a steel pan? It's not going to change my life. I can still have exactly the same life. Why is that negative? Why is that something to be called out? I don't understand. It's not fear mongering. Just change it and that's the end of it. Or don't. It's up to you. It's your decision.
I wondered if it was an element of engagement farming, trying to generate conversation. And there was probably an element to that in terms of like trying to create a difference. And one of the great ways, again, from my sales career, is you create an enemy and an out group, and then you create an in group. So like his in group is like, I'm inclusive. You can use whatever equipment you have available to you. James is being exclusionary and rude by telling you to buy this. And, it probably costs a lot of money. But you're saying, well, actually, the health benefits on your side, the fiscal benefits are pretty much in alignment. Why on earth are you trying to create this sort of beef between the two of us?
Yeah, well, this is the thing. I messaged in person. I said, I just don't understand your problem. I said, I've always never said anything bad about you at all. I've never been rude to you. And what I've said is factually correct. And I said, why are you trying to belittle? He also tried to belittle me as a person, saying all he does is talk about his fancy degree at King's College London. I said, well, how come being educated in this specific topic, having a degree in what's specific to this anyway, what's like an economics degree? Why is that? Why is it now? This is how mental the UK's become. If you are educated, it's seen as like negative to he's trying to like create a laughing stock at me having a degree in what I'm talking about. Why is that negative? I didn't really understand what I was saying. Literally, like, we're belittling me, be educated. Well, I'll tell you exactly what he's doing, which is quite smart in a way. His peer group are people that are very blunt, are people that basically are outcasts, the people that basically probably, well, they do. You can go through as follows: that have pink hair, they're overweight, there was a victim. They're basically people, and he knows this himself. That's
who he's giving red meat to his audience, although they would probably have corn or some sort of replacement. Tank their test even more. But sorry, that was bad.
That's perfect.
But yes, he is giving his audience what they want. He's playing to them because he knows that that's what they will take well. So from a marketing perspective, he's actually doing the right thing. But from a moral perspective, he's continuing to feed them comfortable lies rather than potentially harsher truths. And the truth this time around wasn't even that hard.
It's not harsh. It just wasn't anything. It's not being harsh. An example would be, actually, this isn't being that negative about him. So there's actually Ben Carpenter, if you watch his Instagram. Ben Carpenter is in great shape himself, but every single post he writes is about being a victim. Factually, it's not your fault. There's absolutely no doubt. He'll know this. He only listens to this. It's every single thing. He'll know this. He's smart. Every single post he writes is about, it's not your fault. It's basically, there's too much stress on women being in shape. You're a victim. It's not your fault. Then takes the top off and he has 3% body fat. It's too hard being like this all year round while he's in shape himself. So he's the perfect example of the person that talks about human rights, etc. The people, the elites, basically go, oh yeah, he's an example of that. He sits at the top with his shredded body, which he's worked hard for. He looks great. I'm never going to take that away from him. And saying how it's not your fault being fat, it's okay being fat, while he's shredded at the same time. So what we're trying to get to is he basically understands exactly who his audience are. And all his audience are, if you click on it, you can go through the comments at a later point, are pink-haired, really overweight people. They are, all of them. They're all people that have, I'll be very honest, unfortunately, I don't mean it's a negative word, this is true, they have mental health issues and they feel low. And they want to have that thing, when they go on his post, Ben Carpenter's post, it gives them that warm hug. It's not your fault. I'm really fat. oh, it's not my fault.
He provides them with comforting excuses about their existing circumstances that means that they never are in enough pain or enough discomfort to make a change. Raging Beta Paradox. They're in this comfortably numb zone where it's not great, but somebody's telling them it's okay, so they're kind of okay. Whereas if they were in an environment where people were shaking them and saying, you need to make a change, this is terrible, act now, stop sitting in this terrible situation, they would probably take more action than if they continue to follow this kind of comfort blanket that they get every time they open their feed.
Well, that's exactly what it is. And that's why a lot of people follow him. So it's really interesting, actually. So we talked the engagement thing that I don't know how many followers. I think it's 20.1 or something. I don't know, literally 20,000 followers. However, I have 2 million people look at my page every single month. So, and people say, I know I have the highest engagement I've ever come across versus
it's bonkers.
Well, because I spoke to a lot of friends, I actually spoke to James Smith about this, one of my friends, and I said to him, why is that? And he goes, because you don't give them a comfort blanket. You don't give them that warm hug. They click on this, true. Because I said to him, like, a lot of loads, I mean, seriously loads. A lot of the guys from SS Who Dares Wins follow me, Ollie Ollerton, etc. They see my page, they follow me. A lot of UFC champions, fighters, tons of them. And I said, why are these people, every time they come across me, they follow me? And they said, yeah, because they align with you, they understand you. Also, they realize you're actually, the reason why you're so harsh, you care about people. But most people don't want truth. They want to see something that makes them feel better. They get the kind of like, it's okay, it's not your fault. And then they like this person. They go on their page, they feel low, they're not going to do something about the weight, and they click on their page and it goes, Colin, it's not your fault. Or they go on my page as me eating red meat on a barbecue, shouting at them, telling them they're fat. And it's your fault.
And encouraging them to take action.
Yeah, and they don't want to.
And you also equip them with positive action off the back of it as well. I don't have the lady's handle to hand, and I actually don't think it's relevant for me to share it, but a body positive influencer recently passed away from health issues. And if that's not the wake-up call that people need to take action, then I don't know what is, because while that person is telling you that it's all been fine, it's all great, they have actually fundamentally lived out the experience that shows that it is indeed not great and not all okay.
But I don't think that is going to be a wake-up call, because everyone knows that's true. Do you know what I'm trying to say? I don't think anyone thinks, nobody on earth thinks, is in the Western world anyway, who's educated to some certain extent, beyond GCSEs, thinks being morbidly obese is good for your health. Do they? No. This is the whole point. It's not going to be a wake-up call, because everyone knows. And this is the whole thing we talk about, all of this whole podcast about, people know what the truth is. People know that being morbidly obese is negative. People know men and women are different. People know men and women have completely different traits, and we also we're there to help each other. We're just playing a stupid game with the world, literally lying to each other to make yourselves feel better. We know women select men that are physically strong and tall and earn money, and they want someone who earns more than them to provide for them and protect them. We know men want a slim woman who's kind and gentle, who can look after their children. So stop fucking lying.
Yeah, we're deluding ourselves. It is interesting. I spoke to TJ Power recently. He's a British neuroscientist. He's got incredible work. And we were speaking about dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins. And he's got a book called The Dose Effect, and he's very, very well versed in that. And he was saying that many of the feelings that we're feeling in the modern world, where we're low dopamine, low oxytocin, low serotonin, low endorphins, we're depressed, we're anxious, we're unsure, is actually our body cleverly telling us that we're doing something wrong. So we're watching too much porn, we're vaping, we're eating crap foods, we're not getting enough sunlight, we're not getting enough social connection. That is exactly what you've talked about there. Many of the societal ills that we're facing are because our bodies and our minds are hopefully waking up to the fact that what we're doing is out of alignment with our evolutionary programming and how we want to continue on with the human race. So these feelings that you're getting, which are negative, are your warning sign to move away from it.
Well, absolutely. Literally, I know what makes sense. But again, like we said before, we know this thing. We have all these podcasts that we're telling us, repeated, Andrew Huberman, etc. You know what's good for you? Having sunlight and going to the gym and social interaction, eating non-processed foods, sleeping well.
Working in something you care about that gives you a purpose.
Yeah, finding a partner that you love and you care about, having a family, purpose in your job. Like, what? I mean, obviously, this is the whole point. Literally, why do we need to be told this repeated? At the end of the day, we're animals. It's very, very obvious. And we know if you go out and get some morning sunlight, if I have a good quality breakfast, literally some sort of lean protein and some, healthy fats, I go and lift some weights. I go and see my friend and have a chat with them. It's just like you said, we laugh because it's so obvious, literally. But the point is, why do we need to be told this repeatedly? Well, maybe we do. Maybe I live in a bubble. Maybe I do live in a bubble. That's
We
obvious.
do.
Maybe
We do.
maybe it isn't obvious.
We live in a self-development bubble, but every so often the bubble's expanding, and that's what I've been doing with the show, and that's what I'm going to continue to try and do. And I want to say thank you, James, for coming on again and being part of that
pleasure.
wonderful conversation.
Thank you for having me on. Literally. Yeah,
Where should people head towards to continue the conversation with you?
Well, I was going to say my website to sell to them. That's the first thing I was going to do. Bodytransformationlondon.com is my website for my gym in London. And also, we'll be opening some more gyms soon, which is really cool on the pipeline. And also, we have an online training business. To have a conversation with me and argue with me on Instagram, it's James Cooper at BTX.
Both of those will be linked in the show notes. Thank you, James, and thank you to the listener. I'll be back to speak to you all again very, very soon.